GOA is fighting at the Supreme Court with our amicus brief against a gun control law that disarms victims of violence and violates the Constitution. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. Now, there's a lot of bad information circulating right now about GOA and our amicus brief in US versus Rahimi. In fact, Michael Bloomberg had one of his lackeys write an op-ed in the Washington Post to mock us. First, let's talk about the plaintiff, Zachary Rahimi. This dude sucks. Seriously. This guy is a total degenerate who's committed 9 violent crimes in the state of Texas, including 4 felonies. Actually, most gunners probably would have shot this guy in self-defense if they were present when he was committing any of these crimes. But instead, here we are filing an amicus on his side in this case. Why is that? Well, for starters, the federal government decided to try Rahimi on his federal gun control charge, illegal possession of a weapon while subject to a restraining order, rather than let Texas charge him with 4 felonies and 5 misdemeanors first. Why aren't more people talking about that? Anyways, the gun control that they're charging him with is unconstitutionally vague and penalizes innocent people. That's why GOA is fighting. That's the very narrow question that the Supreme Court has taken up. And all of his other crimes are actually totally irrelevant to the case at SCOTUS. That, of course, doesn't stop the anti-gun movement from slandering GOA as if we want violent criminals on the street with guns. So what's wrong with the restraining order law, and why are we calling it gun control? The law in question is 18 U.S.C. 922 D and G8. If you have a certain type of domestic violence restraining order, you are also prohibited from possessing or receiving a firearm federally and put into the NICS system. But if someone is too dangerous to own a gun, they're likely too dangerous to roam society freely. Lock them up. Interestingly, in another amicus brief for this case, this time by the Crime Prevention Research Center, says this: we looked at the impact of section 922G8 on the number of domestic murders, domestic gun murders, and domestic femicides, and domestic gun femicides. There's no statistically significant evidence of benefits from this law in any of those areas. Indeed, there's evidence that domestic gun murder and domestic gun femicide increased. So instead of decreasing domestic violence and murder, the Crime Prevention Research Center found that this law at best had no effect, or at worst, increased the levels of violent crime. Additionally, we all know that a background check won't stop a determined criminal from getting a gun or committing harm. If you want a restraining order, instead of letting the bad guy roam freely around while you rely on a background check, you need a gun for self-defense. Because if he violates that order, as criminals are known to do, you're gonna need it. And if this is a domestic violence restraining order, well, maybe that violent offender just needs to be charged and put behind bars. But we all know that progressives don't like to do that. It's also totally unconstitutional to disarm someone with a civil restraining order, but punish them with a federal criminal penalty if they violate it. So the law is unconstitutional, but it's also widely abused. Get this. Judges often issue what are called mutual restraining orders on both parties so they don't have to figure out who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. If you read the government's brief, they'll tell you that many states have banned mutual restraining orders. Now here's what they don't tell you. A lot of judges issue identical but separate restraining orders against both parties instead. All this means is that the victim is disarmed too. Of course, the disarmed woman stands little chance of defending herself against her now enraged domestic violence abuser. It's really sickening. The government should be empowering these women and victims with their Second Amendment rights instead. That's why GOA helps train thousands of women per year to carry firearms for self-defense. But that's not all. It's basically standard practice for many divorce lawyers to tell their clients to seek these civil restraining orders. The Fifth Circuit called this a tactical leverage device that helps get their clients a one-up on their ex in court. This helps them get leverage to get more alimony or more privileges in a custody battle over kids. All in all, these domestic violence restraining orders are basically handed out like candy by judges who don't have any incentive to not issue them. And so there are a lot of innocent and non-violent Americans who get caught up in this gun ban. It's unconstitutionally broad, and the law has got to go. We're asking the Supreme Court to strike down this gun law and restore a little bit of freedom to our country. Meanwhile, Zachary Rahimi is going to jail for a long time for his 9 criminal counts in Texas. Good riddance. Thanks for watching Minuteman Moment. Be sure to like and subscribe.